Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. Emergency doctors in Yellowknife are sounding the alarm on a looming summer crisis. Doctors told a committee of MLAs that the emergency room at Stanton Territorial Hospital is in danger of closing. They say almost half the ER shifts over the next 5 months aren't covered. They're calling for immediate measures like last summer when the Northwest Territories government boosted pay for locum contracts. Take a listen.
What we're seeing now is way more empty spots, fully half. And some of them are in May. There's a weekend in May where we've only got one physician currently scheduled for most of the days. So we have no idea, genuinely, we have no idea how we're going to keep the doors of the emergency department open. As you know, the emergency department is the beating heart of the entire northern system. We hear sometimes on the news that, an emergency department near where I am right now in Ontario may close, but people can just go to the next town and seek emergency care there. It would be a disaster for the northern healthcare system, for the emergency department to close for even one day. But I don't know, with our current situation, how we're going to stop that from happening over the summer. So we need some kind of a similar incentive to be put forward for an increased amount of pay for the locum physicians for this summer, recognizing that that is only a stopgap, and really we need to be creating longer term incentive structures for contract-based physicians to keep people in the north for good.
Northwest Territories Premier R.J. Simpson also spoke to the committee today. He acknowledged there are immediate issues that need to be addressed, but didn't say what the territory plans to do. One of the complainants in the sexual assault trial of a former NWT teacher testified on Thursday. Neil Berry is facing 3 charges of sexual assault and 3 charges of sexual exploitation. The jury trial was in its second day at the Yellowknife courthouse. Nadir Hashmi reports, but first a warning, the story contains distressing details.
Outside court today, Berry's lawyer said he had nothing to say about the trial. Earlier, one of the complainants told the jury that Berry sexually assaulted him in Yellowknife in the summer of 2009. His identity is protected by a publication ban. At the time, he says Berry was a school teacher and basketball coach in Tulita. The complainant says his parents didn't live in the community and that he had a parent-like relationship with Berry. He said they were in Yellowknife for the Arctic Winter Games basketball trials, sharing a hotel room. He told the jury that one night he woke up to Berry performing oral sex on him. He said he was shocked and froze. The man also described other sexual incidents that made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He said he kept it to himself for years, feeling embarrassed and scared. But after having children of his own, he told his wife and later went to the police. Berry was officially charged in 2021. He's pleading not guilty to all charges. The Crown says 3 other boys alleged similar incidents happened to them between 2007 and 2011. Amy Lind is Berry's defense lawyer. She questioned the witness about how he could remember incidents that happened so long ago and pointed out inconsistencies between his testimony in court and what he told the police. Lind said the man told the police that he shouted at Berry after waking up to him performing oral sex. She also told the court that the basketball tryouts were held in December 2009, not the summer as the alleged victim testified. The complainant told the court that his emotions were running high during the police statement and the entire experience was traumatizing. He said the incident affected him and his family for many years. The trial continues on Monday. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A Northwest Territories judge has delivered her verdict in a Yellowknife dangerous driving case. Hannah Lafferty has been declared guilty of dangerous driving causing death. The verdict was delivered today in the NWT Supreme Court in Yellowknife. Lafferty hit pedestrian Jermaine Mantla with her car in April of 2022. The impact caused him serious injuries, which later led to his death. At the time, Lafferty was swerving and driving fast with the car door open. She argued at trial she was panicked when she hit Mantla. She argued she was driving recklessly to shake a woman holding her car, and she believed the woman was trying to attack her. The judge dismissed this argument. The Association of Yukon Communities is meeting this weekend. The annual conference is in Haines Junction. There are 2 full days of seminars planned focused on community issues, and it's also the association's 50th anniversary. CBC spoke with the association president earlier.
I hope that people leave knowing the importance and relevance of AYC, especially going forward. The hard work that the organization has done over the last 50 years and continues to do. We have a lot of new faces at AYC and just in the municipal world in the Yukon, and so a lot of them maybe weren't necessarily around for a lot of the stuff that AYC's been involved with over time. So just making sure that everyone's aware of the importance of the organization and just really celebrating how far we've come, where we've come from, and where we're going.
Sure. And what are some issues that you think are top of mind for community leaders here? Obviously recognizing that not every community is the same, but what are you expecting to hear people talking about?
So just like overarching themes, like when we're talking about resolutions and stuff like that, that we expect are coming forward. There's community safety is a big one for pretty much every single municipality. Financial sustainability, and emergency preparedness and mitigation, of course. So.
And what are you looking forward to the most this weekend?
Just connecting with my peers and fellow councillors and dignitaries from around the Yukon. We don't get to all get together that often, so it's really enlightening to be able to, have those conversations.
That was Lauren Hanchar, president of the Association of Yukon Communities. Plans are underway to replace the George Black Ferry in Dawson City, Yukon. The aging vessel has transported people across the Yukon River for more than 50 years. The ferry only runs in the summer months. It's a critical connection between Dawson City and West Dawson, and also for visitors traveling the top of the world highway to Alaska. But the ferry has been plagued by mechanical issues over the past few years, and the Yukon government wants a more energy efficient and cost-effective replacement.
I don't know if you've driven in a vehicle made in the 60s anytime recently, but they're usually louder, consume more fuel. So I think with a new vehicle with our modern technology, it's just going to be better, more efficient, more reliable all around.
The Yukon government will spend $100,000 over the next 2 years to study a design for the new ferry and come up with a cost estimate. Work on the replacement ferry is scheduled to start in 2027, with the vessel in the water by 2029. A skier has been rescued from Ayuituk National Park in Nunavut after a polar bear attack. Parks Canada says the incident happened early Thursday morning near Summit Lake. The skier got help from 4 other visitors who contacted Parks Canada. A helicopter couldn't land safely in the area, so the group had to be evacuated by snowmobile. The injured skier is being treated at Pangnaktu's Health Center. All 4 major parties have released the price tag for their election promises, and they include a variety of commitments around defense and infrastructure. Natalie Pressman read through those platforms with this question: what will the federal election mean for the North?
The Green Party platform focuses on clean energy, committing to supporting northern communities in transitioning off diesel and promoting community-owned microgrids. The Greens also promise a national fund to support community disaster planning and prevention and a standardized federal evacuation guideline. The Green and NDP platforms both promise to improve nutrition north, and the NDP also promises to implement price caps on certain food items to keep food prices low. In terms of reconciliation, the NDP says it would appoint a special prosecutor to investigate crimes committed at residential schools. For the Liberals, their platform puts an emphasis on projects that help Northerners and defends the Arctic. That includes upgrading power plants, a new hydroelectric project, new ports, and airstrips. The Liberals say they will also add 50 new Arctic Indigenous Guardians to support environmental monitoring. For the Conservatives, their party is promising to build a new military base in Iqaluit and a new army reserve in Whitehorse. Conservatives also offer a plan for economic reconciliation by expanding development and offering Indigenous ownership opportunities in resource projects. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Potential leaders in the Northwest Territories got to make their case to high school students in Yellowknife on Thursday. Students took part in a mock election and had the chance to raise issues that matter to them. Some of the questions were provided to the candidates in advance and some were not. Jocelyn Chappelle has more.
The election forum was held at St. Patrick's High School. Many students were keen to hear how the next government would plan for the future.
It's important to know who's leading. It can force debates and you get more knowledge from what's going on and how it works.
Our political state right now is kind of messy, and I just wonder if it could be smoothened out and what the plans are.
Yeah, I'm interested in what they're going to talk about.
Social Studies 10 classes came up with the questions. They touched on affordability, mental health, climate change, education, and the drug crisis. Students also moderated and kept the hour-long forum running smoothly. Char Crow is a grade 10 student at St. Pat's. She hopes her peers were interested in the discussions.
I think they should understand how politics changes our life and how important it is to understand what voting does and that it's important and that the different candidates and know what they're wanting to change.
NDP candidate Kelvin Cochilia, Conservative Kimberly Fairman, and Liberal Rebecca Alty participated in the forum. But Green Party candidate Angela Davidson, also known as Rainbow Eyes, did not. Lauralee Wark is a social studies teacher at the high school. She says students will also participate in a mock vote.
It gives them a chance to have their voice heard, that, this is how the youth voted, and if they'd been included, this would have been, how they would have gone.
Those results will be released after Elections Canada ballots are counted on Monday. Jocelyn Chappelle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
In the Yukon, teachers at Whitehorse Elementary School are prepping students at an early age on how and why to vote. This week, 2 classes set up a real voting station inside the school. Students practiced getting a ballot and then making their choice. They also learned that they must drop their ballot into a box without interference from an election worker. The school polling station used Authentic Elections Canada blinds. It's all part of a civic learning curriculum developed at the school.
It felt pretty fun, and it kind of felt like I was doing an important job.
Yeah, same.
Jamaica Whalen is one of the teachers that helped create the experience. She says teaching students about politics, elections, and democracy is recognition that young people understand complex issues.
My colleagues and I feel that it's very important to engage youth in politics and for them to practice the civic duty of voting so that when they turn 18 and are able to vote in federal elections, they are equipped to make an informed choice.
Whalen says that during the exercise, teachers saw the students come to their own conclusions about politics based on their personal values. And across Canada, more than 7 million people voted at advance polls. That is a 25% increase from the last federal election in 2021. And as far as the North goes, the stats might surprise you. Nunavut and NWT both saw an increase of more than 100 voters. But in the Yukon, 570 fewer people used the advance polling option. However, more than 5,000 Yukoners voted by a special ballot. That's more than double the number from the last election in 2021. CBC News does have you covered for election night on Monday, April 28th. Chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton will give you minute-by-minute updates as polls close across the country. You can watch that starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, which is 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time and 3:30 p.m. Yukon Time, wherever you watch CBC News. And that includes right here. There will be no Northbeat on Monday due to this special coverage. Ahead of Monday's election, Northwest Territories Premier R.J. Simpson published an open letter calling on the federal government to focus on the North. In it, he asks for investment, collaboration, and progress for the Northwest Territories. We sat down earlier to talk about it. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure, anytime.
So I'm going to start with a line from your open letter. I'm just going to read it. Canada must choose by 2030, will we be a northern power or a bystander in our own backyard? I'm wondering which of those two you think we are right now.
Well, there's a lot of attention on the North right now, from around the world, and finally from our own federal government as well. And that's because of the pressure from the outside world. And so it's clear that we need to do more as a country to invest in the North. And so that's in terms of the infrastructure for day-to-day use, but also our military infrastructure. That's been something that's been noted as I've talked to people from across the country, and when I was down in the United States, they noted that as well. So even our allies in the United States say we need to do more on that front.
So I'm kind of reading a bystander in our own backyard, in a way, vibe right now. How would we move then to a northern power in 5 years?
You know what, there's so much potential in the North. It's just going to take some focus by the federal government. We are a small government. We're a huge territory, but a small government and a small population. But we have big aspirations, but we need that partnership with the federal government. And so there's big opportunities for investments in things like the Mackenzie Valley Highway, Slave Geological Province Road. And once we start making those investments, it not only asserts our sovereignty, it opens up economic corridors and access to resources that will benefit not just the North, but all of Canada.
Let's talk about some of those projects. I'm curious what your ask is of Ottawa. What are the specifics that you want from them? Consultation is good. We need that. We need a seat at the table. But what specifically do you want them to invest in?
At a very high level, I want them to pay attention to us. That's the first thing. Ottawa needs to realize we're not a province. We have different needs, and we have a different relationship with Ottawa. And when they design a program, when they roll out a funding pot, they need to have that consideration that the North is different. Not just us, everything north of 60 is different. And so if we have that, that's a great starting point. And then from there, there's opportunities for big investments in infrastructure, working with us on the regulatory regime to ensure that we can do more resource extraction for the benefit of everyone. So lots of opportunities.
Yeah, I'll go back to the piece again, where you're making this argument that northern infrastructure enhances Canada's security, trade capacity, and economic independence. So here in the North, we know what we need and we know why we need it. But I'm wondering in the South, as you're making these arguments, what you would say to people who might look at us and say, there's not that many people in the Northern Territories, specifically, of course, for us in the Northwest Territories. Why are we spending all this money on infrastructure? How does that further Canada's security and sovereignty?
Well, there wasn't that many people in southern Canada when the railroads were built and when major investments like that were made. And so it's sort of that old adage, if you build it, they will come. And so without a highway, how do we expect to build our economy and to grow our economy? So once we get those pieces in place, then we can grow. And also, we have resources that are, they're territorial resources, they're the resources of the Indigenous peoples whose land this is, but they benefit all of Canada. And so ensuring that we make those investments so that we can benefit all Canadians is important.
There's been a pattern lately of the northern premiers, I think, working to capitalize on this energy, this focus globally in the North. So how do you keep that energy forward when that focus starts to shift, as it always inevitably does?
Well, I think in this case, there's a lot of talk about Canada's NATO commitment of 2% and talk about meeting that by 2030 by a number of the parties right now running federally. And so just by that alone, I think that's going to help us keep that focus on this. When we talk about things like military investment and dual use infrastructure, that's always going to be at the forefront. The need for critical minerals to develop new industries, to support existing industries, that's always going to be there because as we see what's going on in the world, traditional supply chains can't necessarily be relied upon. We are a country that's ruled by law, governed by law. We're predictable. And we have high environmental standards. It's a place people want to do business. And so I think it's important to ensure that people are aware of that and that we're capitalizing on that.
And how do you bridge, so you mentioned, the Northwest Territories government is a small government for a vast land. There's a lot of needs across Canada. And we need both the federal investment and also private sector investment. So how do you balance all of that while also looking at that private sector investment and justifying to people, whether it's tax cuts or whatever the programs might be, why we're helping those private investors with our taxpayer money, both, I guess, territorially, and I know you're not a federal politician, but you have those conversations.
Well, when I look at the investments that were made by tax dollars in the North, they've resulted in employment for people, right? And so, even if we're supporting a mining operation, working with them on their regulatory system or on that process, that's eventually going to lead to benefits for Northerners. All of these things, they lead to economic opportunities. And so I always take the lens of, yeah, we're a big territory, but we got to bring it down to the community level. And so I think about the benefits to individuals in some of the small communities, especially where there isn't a lot of economy. How do we support them to grow their economy? There's also an element of reconciliation here. There's a lot of talk about that at the federal level, and we've seen some things happen, but there's a lot more to be done. The North has been left out of investments that occurred across Canada. We haven't been given that opportunity to advance with the rest of Canada, and so here's an opportunity to make that right, and it's a smart thing to do for the government as well, because we got to remember the federal government gets part of our mining royalties as well. When we have some of these big mines, there's people from across Canada working here. So the investments by the federal government, yes, they might require a lot of money, but there's big long-term benefits for all of Canada.
We've long needed infrastructure in the North, right? I think that's one of the big issues that we have is we need infrastructure, and it's long been an ask from the territorial governments, all of them. I'm just wondering in your conversations, if you've noticed lately that there's been a different tone, perhaps, just with this focus on the North. We've seen the lobbying efforts getting front and center saying, hey, like you said, we need you to pay attention to us. And I just wonder if the politicians that you're talking with in Ottawa are receiving that message in a different way.
I would say they are, and that is because of the focus the entire world is putting on the North. They're being forced to pay attention, and so it's up to us to make sure that we hold on to their attention, and we do that by consistent lobbying of the federal government, working with Indigenous governments in the territory to go and lobby jointly, which I think goes a long way. And so, yes, there is attention right now. There is a focus both at the political level and at the public service level, but it's up to us to sustain that. And some of the comments I've heard are people are talking about the North. They're not necessarily talking to the North. So that's a conversation we need to have as well.
And I know in addition to publishing this piece, you also sent letters to the federal party leaders. Can you kind of sum up what was in those letters and if you've had any responses?
Yeah, so we sent letters to the federal leaders as well as the local candidates asking their views on some of the issues that are facing the territory. So how are they going to work with Indigenous governments? What are they going to do to help us address our infrastructure deficit? And we've received a couple responses, and we've actually posted those online, so all of the public can have a look at those to help inform their decision.
And let's talk about the decision people are making on Monday, not from a personal perspective, but from your perspective as leader. When we have a prime minister that is elected, how are you going to get in that person's ear with these ideas?
Well, and that's where our strategy comes in of engaging the federal government. So we engage at the officials level, so the public service level, because I know personally that if I just have a meeting and I have no background information on that meeting, we're not going to see good outcomes out of there. So we're engaging at the officials level so that when we actually go and meet with the ministers and meet with the prime minister, they'll know what we need. They'll know what they can do to help us, and we can make it productive meetings. And so, we're actively looking at when we can get in front of the Prime Minister, whoever that may be, as soon as possible, because we know this first couple months of a new government is going to be critical. Like, they're going to be getting their feet under them, but they're also going to be forming their ideas and building their budget.
Okay. Thank you so much, Premier, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Yukon Frolic Spring Festival is back for its 49th year in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. The longtime festival sees residents gather with friends and family to celebrate the spring. The administrator of the Frolic says this year's festival focuses on events that transfer elder knowledge to younger generations.
So we're starting a sharing event where we take an elder and give them a team who will teach them traditional skills like tea boiling, bannock making, fish filleting, different aspects that used to happen on the land. The elder would teach her team or his team, and then from there they would have to duplicate what they were taught. They would be graded based on taste and speed and accuracy, and to pass along the traditional knowledge.
Muse says the festival is always trying to stick to its roots by highlighting traditional knowledge. The Yukon Frolics runs from May 10th to May 19th. The Nunavut Quest has finished for another year. 8 participants raced from Pond Inlet to Igloolik. The CBC's Eli Kakasik-Toktu has more from the finish line.
After a 9-day journey spanning 500 kilometers, 8 mushers made it safely to Igloolik. Although days of bad weather delayed the race, it was a beautiful spring day for the Finnish elderly, and skidoo driver Charlie Kuvakdak Inuagak says he was full of pride seeing the younger generation to take part. He says the mushers also went through some areas where it was very smooth and go so fast. The first ones came to the next camp very fast. Many spectators showed up for the race, including Lou Philip of Iqaluit. He was among a few men who traveled from Iqaluit to Igloolik, all by skidoo, to watch. He says it was a rough ride for him. Says it was fine, but the whole trip was all white out every day while traveling. Some areas also have a lot of deep snow. Janelle Nanurang Utak was the first to cross the finish line, though the final results will be revealed tonight after times are verified. That's part of timekeeper Shan Shan Tian's job.
I'm going to have to do some time crunching and adding bonus times and penalty times. But yeah, it was an incredible race. Everyone raced incredibly well.
The closing ceremonies will be held tonight at the community hall here in Igloolik.
Ilay kakasaktak to CBCP Badleyon, Igloolik.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. Just a reminder, there's no Northbeat on Monday, April 28th because of our special national coverage of the federal election, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
By voting NDP, you've helped to build this country. Healthcare for families, pensions for workers. And even when we're not in power, do Democrats get things done for people, like dental care? It's because of you. Because you vote NDP, we can make life better for ordinary people, not the billionaires, and stand up to any government that wants to cut the things that we value. Vote NDP and make sure we're there, fighting for our kind of Canada, fighting for you.
The claims period for 2 classes in the First Nations Child and Family Services and Jordan's Principal Settlement is now open.
First Nations children who were removed from their homes on reserve between April 1st, 1991 and March 31st, 2022, and their caregiving parents and caregiving grandparents can now submit a claim for compensation.
There are free supports to help you fill out your form.
And mental health and wellness supports if you need them.
Learn more and submit your claim at fnchildclaims.ca.
The federal election is on Monday, April 28th. Are you planning to vote? Check your voter information card or visit elections.ca to find out where and when to vote. Polls are open for 12 hours. Don't forget to bring accepted ID. If you're not registered to vote, you can register at your assigned polling station. It's our vote.
For the official information you need to vote, visit elections.ca or call 1-800-463-6868.